The door creaked open. No one was supposed to be home. Footsteps echoed down the hall, slow and heavy. The lights flickered. She grabbed her phone, but it had no signal. A shadow moved past the window. Her heart pounded. Was someone watching? A quiet knock tapped 3 times on the wall behind her, but there was no door there. What would you do if the walls knew your name? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more chills. You won't want to miss what's coming next. David sat on the old wooden chair in his living room, staring at the rain hitting the window. It had been 5 years since he last saw Sophia, his wife. 5 long years since he had kicked her out of their home, telling her never to return. She had betrayed him, or at least, that's what he had believed back then. He had found messages on her phone, messages from another man. She had tried to explain, but David had been too angry to listen. Now, as he sipped his coffee, a loud knock came at the door. Who could that be, he wondered. He stood up and walked to the door. When he opened it, his heart nearly stopped. There stood Sophia, soaking wet from the rain, holding the hands of 2 small children, a boy and a girl. They looked about 4 years old, their big blue eyes staring up at him. David, Sophia whispered, I need to talk to you. David's hands clenched into fists. What are you doing here? He asked coldly. I told you to never come back. I know, she said, her voice shaking, but I had no choice. I have to tell you something. It's about the twins. David looked at the children again. His stomach twisted. Something about them seemed familiar. Who are they? He asked. Sophia took a deep breath. David, they're your children. David felt as if the ground had disappeared under his feet. His? That was impossible. No, he whispered, shaking his head. That can't be true. You left years ago. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. You never let me explain, she said, and now I have to tell you the truth. David felt anger, confusion, and fear all at once. He looked at the twins again, then back at Sophia. What truth? He demanded. Sophia swallowed hard. The reason I left, the real reason, is something that will change everything. David's hands trembled. His mind raced with questions, but only one came out. What do you mean? What truth? He asked, his voice rough. Sophia took a shaky breath. Can we come inside? She asked softly. The kids are cold. David hesitated. Every part of him screamed to shut the door, to push away the past that had just knocked on his doorstep. But then he looked at the children. Their lips were slightly blue from the cold, their tiny hands clutching Sophia's dress. Without a word, he stepped aside. Sophia led the twins into the living room. They sat on the couch, their eyes wide as they took in the place. David grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around them, his hands shaking as he did. Once they were settled, he turned to Sophia. Now talk. Sophia rubbed her hands together. David, she began, I never betrayed you. The messages you saw on my phone, they weren't what you thought. David scoffed. Then what were they? They were from my doctor, Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. David frowned. Doctor? She nodded. That night, the night you threw me out, I had just found out I was pregnant, but I was also very sick. David's chest tightened. Sick? With what? Sophia looked away. I had a heart condition. The doctor had been sending me messages about my tests and treatment options. I wanted to tell you, but before I could, you found my phone and got angry. You never let me explain. David's head spun. He felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I left because I didn't want you to see me weak, Sophia continued. I thought, I thought I was going to die. David stared at her, his heart pounding. And the twins? Sophia swallowed hard. I had them alone. I fought for my life every single day. And when I got better, I wanted to come back. But I was afraid you still wouldn't believe me. David turned to look at the children again. They were now cuddled under the blanket, whispering to each other. He clenched his jaw. And now? Why come back now? Sophia looked him in the eye. Because, David, there's something else. Something you need to know. David's hands curled into fists. What? Sophia hesitated. Then with a deep breath, she whispered, Someone tried to keep me away from you. And that person is someone you trust. David felt a chill crawl up his spine. His heart pounded in his chest as he repeated Sophia's words in his head. Someone tried to keep me away from you, and that person is someone you trust. His throat went dry. Who? He demanded. Sophia hesitated, glancing at the twins. She lowered her voice. Not in front of them, she said. David took a deep breath and turned to the children. Why don't you two go play in the other room? He said, forcing his voice to be gentle. The twins looked up at their mother. Sophia nodded, and they slid off the couch, walking down the hall with sleepy steps. As soon as they were out of sight, David turned back to Sophia. Tell me, he said, his voice sharp. Sophia's hands tightened into fists on her lap. It was your brother, Lucas. David's body went stiff. Lucas? He repeated, shaking his head. That's impossible. He wouldn't do that. Sophia's eyes darkened. He did. After you kicked me out, I had nowhere to go. I was scared, pregnant, and sick. I tried to call you, but you never answered. Then one day Lucas found me. David's stomach twisted. What did he do? He told me you hated me, she whispered, that you never wanted to see me again. He said you were already moving on, that you were with someone else. David's jaw clenched. That's a lie, he growled. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I believed him, David. I was heartbroken. I had nothing left. Lucas offered to help me. He paid for my medical bills, found me a place to stay. But there was one rule. David swallowed hard. What rule? Sophia's voice trembled. I was never to contact you again. David shot up from his chair, his hands running through his hair. This doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? Why would Lucas? And then suddenly, a thought hit him. His blood ran cold. Lucas always hated Sophia. From the moment David had married her, Lucas had said she wasn't right for him. He had warned David that she would break his heart, that she was a liar. Had Lucas done this on purpose? Had his own brother tricked him into losing his wife? David's fists clenched. Where is he now? He asked through gritted teeth. Sophia wiped a tear from her cheek. I don't know, she said. But David, there's more. David turned to her, his heart pounding. More? Sophia nodded. The last time I saw Lucas, he told me something else. Something I didn't believe at first. David swallowed. What did he say? Sophia took a deep breath. He said that if I ever came back to you, we would all be in danger. David's eyes widened. Danger? From who? Sophia's lips trembled. From him. A sudden crash sounded from the kitchen. David and Sophia both jumped. And then a voice came from the doorway. Well, looks like the secret's out. David spun around, his heart stopping. There, standing in the shadows, was Lucas. David's heart pounded as he stared at Lucas. His brother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. The dim light from the kitchen cast shadows over his face, making his expression unreadable. Sophia gasped and grabbed David's arm. "How did you get in here?" she whispered. Lucas chuckled. "Come on, little brother," he said. "I still have the spare key. Did you really think I wouldn't keep an eye on you?" David clenched his fists. "You lied to me," he growled. "You told me Sophia betrayed me. You kept my children away from me. Why, Lucas? What did you get out of it?" Lucas took a slow step forward. "I did what was best for you," he said smoothly. "She was a distraction. You were too soft with her. You needed to focus on your business, on your future, not on some woman who was only going to bring you down." David's blood boiled. "You had no right," he shouted. Sophia stepped in front of him, her eyes blazing with anger. "You ruined our lives, Lucas," she spat. "You made me believe David didn't love me anymore. You made him believe I was unfaithful. And for what? What did you gain from it?" Lucas's smirk faltered for a moment. Then he sighed and shook his head. "You still don't get it, do you?" he muttered. "It was never just about you two." David's eyes narrowed. "Then what was it about?" Lucas hesitated. Then in a cold voice he said, "Dad." David froze. "Dad?" Lucas nodded. "Before he died, Dad told me something. Something about you." His expression darkened. "He said you were the only one who could inherit the company, that no matter what, you were the one who would take control." David frowned. "So what?" Lucas laughed bitterly. "So what?" he echoed. "I worked my whole life to prove I was better than you. I stayed by Dad's side, learned everything about the business, sacrificed everything. While you were off playing house with Sophia," he shook his head. "But it didn't matter. He still chose you." David stared at his brother in shock. "So you destroyed my marriage because you were jealous?" Lucas scoffed. "I did what I had to do. If you had stayed with Sophia, you would have been too distracted. You wouldn't have been strong enough to run the company. I made you into a man who could survive on his own." He gestured toward the twins. "And yet, here you are, still weak." David took a deep breath, trying to control his rage. "You took everything from me," he said quietly. "But now I know the truth, and I won't let you control my life anymore." Lucas smirked again. "Oh, David," he sighed. "You still think you've won?" Sophia tensed. "What are you talking about?" Lucas's eyes gleamed with something dark. "You think I just let you find each other again? You think I didn't know this day would come?" He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "I let this happen because now I'm going to take away more than just your marriage." David's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Lucas tilted his head. "You'll find out soon enough." And before David could stop him, Lucas turned and walked out the door, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any storm. David stood frozen, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. He stared at the open door where Lucas had just walked out, his mind spinning with fear and rage. Sophia grabbed his arm. "David," she whispered, her voice shaking, "what do you think he meant by that? What is he planning?" David didn't answer right away. He was staring into the night, watching the shadows outside dance under the streetlight. "I don't know," he said finally, "but if I know Lucas, it won't be something small. He always finishes what he starts." Sophia looked toward the hallway where the twins were. "Do you think he would, do something to the kids?" David's heart skipped. "Not if I can help it." He walked to the door and locked it. Then he checked the windows, one by one. Every curtain was pulled, every latch secure. When he turned back to Sophia, His voice was steady, but his eyes were full of worry. "Pack a bag," he said. "We're leaving tonight." Sophia blinked. "Where will we go?" David didn't hesitate. "Somewhere he won't find us, at least until I figure out what he's planning." Sophia looked unsure. "He's your brother, David. You know how far he'll go better than anyone. Do you really think running will stop him?" David shook his head. "Number but staying will only give him a head start." Sophia nodded slowly, then rushed down the hall to gather the twins. David walked into the kitchen and opened the drawer by the fridge. Inside was a small box. He hadn't touched it in years. He opened it, revealing a single silver key and a phone. A different phone, not the one he usually used. He hadn't needed it in a long time, but now everything had changed. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. After a few rings, someone answered. "David?" a voice said. It was deep and calm, with a hint of surprise. "I need your help," David said. "It's about Lucas, and it's serious." There was a pause on the other end. "I'll be there in an hour." David hung up. Sophia returned with the twins, who were half asleep and holding small backpacks. David smiled gently at them, brushing a curl away from the little girl's forehead. "We're going on a trip," he told them softly, "just for a little while." The boy looked up at him. "Will there be pancakes?" he asked sleepily. David chuckled, even though his chest felt tight. "Lots of pancakes," he promised. But as they stepped outside into the night, David knew this was only the beginning. Whatever Lucas was planning, he wouldn't stop. And David had just put his family right in the middle of the storm. The night air was cold and quiet as David helped Sophia buckle the twins into the back seat of the car. He kept looking over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the street for any sign of Lucas. But the road was still, and the shadows held their breath. Sophia slid into the passenger seat, clutching her phone tightly. "Where are we going?" she asked. David started the engine and pulled away from the house. "A place Dad used to take us when we were kids. A cabin near the lake, deep in the woods. No one knows about it but family, and one other person." He didn't say the name, but Sophia gave him a questioning look. Before she could ask, David added, "Someone I trust. The only person who knows how to stop Lucas." The drive was long and quiet. The twins fell asleep in the back seat, their heads resting on each other. Sophia watched them, her fingers brushing the small scar on her wrist. A reminder of the hospital days, the lonely nights, the fear of dying before the twins were even born. When they finally arrived at the cabin, it was nearly midnight. The wooden house stood tall and quiet, surrounded by trees and a blanket of stars above. David unlocked the door and stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath his feet. The air smelled like pine and old firewood. As Sophia carried the twins to the bedroom, David lit a few candles and sat down at the table, waiting. Half an hour passed. Then a soft knock came at the door. David opened it quickly. There stood a tall woman in a long coat, her face serious, her brown eyes sharp. She looked around before stepping inside. "You weren't kidding," she said. "Lucas is making moves." Sophia stepped out of the hallway, her eyes widening. "Who is she?" The woman gave a small nod. "I'm Natalie. I work for your father." She looked at David. "And I've been keeping an eye on your brother." David motioned for her to sit. "Tell me everything." Natalie sat and pulled a small black notebook from her coat. "Your brother isn't just trying to take over the company," she said. "He's using it to fund something bigger, something dangerous. He's been building connections with people who don't ask questions, People who deal in secrets, money, and threats. Sophia's face paled. Why would he need the kind of power? Natalie looked at her with a heavy expression. Because he wants more than your marriage, more than your family. He wants to erase everything your father left behind. He wants to make sure no one remembers David Hayes as the heir. Only Lucas. David leaned back in his chair. How do we stop him? Natalie opened her notebook to a page with numbers and names. There's a hidden account, one your father kept in case something ever went wrong. If we find it, we find the proof. We expose everything. Sophia frowned. Where is it? Natalie smiled slightly. That's the part no one has figured out yet. David stood up, his voice firm. Then we start now. Tonight, before Lucas makes his next move. Outside in the woods just beyond the tree line, a figure stood watching the cabin, hidden by shadows, still as stone. Lucas. A smirk curled across his face as he turned and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, the cabin was filled with soft sunlight and the smell of pancakes, just as David had promised. The twins laughed as they ate, their tiny feet swinging beneath the table. For a moment, everything felt peaceful, almost normal, but David knew it wouldn't last. Natalie stood near the window, scanning the woods with sharp eyes. He was here last night, she said quietly. I saw footprints near the back. He's watching us. David nodded, his jaw tight. Then we give him something to watch. They packed quickly. Natalie handed David a flash drive. This is what I could pull from the company servers. Emails, bank transfers, secret meetings. It's not everything, but it's enough to make him sweat. Sophia looked worried. If we go public with this, won't he try to stop us? David gave a small smile. Let him try. He's not the only one with secrets. They drove into the city together. Natalie had arranged a meeting with a trusted journalist who had helped expose a government scandal years ago. Inside a quiet diner, they handed over the flash drive. You're sure about this? The reporter asked. Once this goes out, it can't be taken back. David looked at Sophia, who held one twin on her lap while the other colored on a napkin. Then he looked back at the reporter. I've lost too much already, he said. I won't lose my family again. That night, the news hit every screen, every phone, every paper. Business tycoon Lucas Hayes exposed in secret empire plot. Shocking betrayal inside family company. The reaction was instant. Police raided Lucas's office. Partners cut ties. The company board called for an emergency meeting. Lucas was caught trying to flee the country. They found more than money in his private vault. They found recordings. Proof that he had plotted to ruin David. Proof that he had threatened Sophia. Proof that he had gone too far. 2 days later, David stood in front of a courthouse, Sophia by his side holding his hand. Reporters shouted questions. He said only this, truth always wins, and now I can finally start again. Months passed. The company was rebuilt, not just by David, but with Sophia beside him. They worked as a team, stronger than ever. The twins played in the office sometimes, their laughter filling the halls that were once full of silence. One evening, as the sun set behind their new home, David stood outside on the porch with Sophia. I almost lost everything, he said softly. Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. But we didn't, she whispered. We're here, together. And for the first time in years, David smiled. Not the smile he gave to hide pain, but the kind that came from peace. The storm was over, and their new life had just begun.